Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us to the Reuters Events webinar here from Start to Scale, Measure Omnichannel Impact and Unlock the Full Potential of Personalization. It's my privilege to introduce our panel. But first, a few words. My name is Jonathan Elliott. I would like to thank Point B for sponsoring today's event. We're going to be talking about omnichannel and personalization, and we've got some great contributors coming up. But just let's have a little review of the key points that will be coming across, hopefully. One will be unlocking the true value of personalization. We'll be looking at practical approaches from start to scale. We'll be talking about how you can align your organization for omnichannel success, and hopefully we'll cover some field lessons, successes, challenges, and future directions. Now, let's go straight to the people who know what they're talking about here today, our experts, panelists. First of all, I'd like to introduce Aletta Brandl, who's team lead, Omnichannel Excellence at Boehringer Ingelheim. Aletta, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. Do you want me to?
Yeah, please do.
Short introduction.
I'll introduce everybody, and then we'll talk in turn. Maybe that's the best way to do it. We've got Ben Clark, who's the director of Omnichannel strategy at Jazz Pharmaceuticals. Ben from New York, at New York Today. Thank you very much for joining us. And Scott Fasser, a solutions principal at Point B. And finally, Tyler Rodelico, Director of Medical Omnichannel and Content Strategy at AstraZeneca. To get us started, let's have a little chat about where everyone's coming from. And Aletta, just tell us a little bit about yourself and share us about your role and your organization. And perhaps also just tell us about what you're looking forward to talking about today.
Yes, thank you. Jumped the gun a little bit there. I'm excited to share my perspective today. But I'm the team lead of Omnichannel Excellence at Boehringer Ingelheim in Canada. So I oversee the Omnichannel execution for the Canadian market. If you don't know, Boehringer Ingelheim is a pharmaceutical company, still privately owned. It is headquartered in Ingelheim, Germany, with offices across the world. And we cover therapy areas such as oncology, obesity, eye disease, lung disease. So I oversee a team of omnichannel managers that support across all of our therapy areas, both commercial and medical. And I know we have a diverse audience across the globe today. And just to give you context, the Canadian pharmaceutical marketing environment is different than the US. It is similar to many European countries. So keep that lens when you listen to what I'm saying. We're very similar to the German regulatory environment, very similar to the UK, and a little bit comparative to France. So I'll get into a little bit about that. And I'm excited to talk about collecting customer data and how we can use customer data to drive personalized omnichannel experiences.
Fantastic. That's really exciting. Ben, at Jazz Pharmaceuticals, perhaps to Ben Clark, perhaps you could just introduce yourself, a little bit about your role and the organization, and tell us what you're looking forward to today.
Sure. Hey, everyone. I am Ben Clark, Director of Omnichannel Strategy at Jazz. My team, oversees omnichannel strategy and execution across all of our franchises, which focus on rare disease in neurology and oncology. I've been with Jazz for about 2 years, and we've worked really hard to expand our capabilities, not only throughout commercial, but also through medical. Prior to Jazz, I've kind of been in this space since way too long ago that I don't want to mention, but I will say in the pharmaceutical world for about 10 years.
Fabulous.
And
Scott.
in terms of, in terms of what I'm looking forward to, I love to learn, and I'm hoping that the other experts here can teach me a few things that we can bring back to Jazz to implement.
Awesome, thank you. Scott Fasser at Point B, perhaps you could introduce yourself, to a little bit about your organization and what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Scott Fasser, I'm Principal of Marketing Modernization. Here at Point B, we're a management consulting company, big practice in life sciences, healthcare, consumer and retail, quick serve. So quite a few different industries. I've got over 30 years background. I'm not afraid to say it, in digital marketing and communications. One of the things that we're really passionate about is how do we help brands have really a deeper, relevant one-to-one communication with HCPs, with patients. We've got a whole practice built around that. And for me, the biggest thing about omnichannel is, technology is kind of the easy part. It's really about how do you bring alignment across different teams? How do you bring measurements that people can respond to? How do you bring process that reduces friction in the overall flow of work and really help brands make that connection so that every touch point that you have the opportunity to have with HCPs or patients is really valuable for both of them. So excited to talk about that and learn from everyone else on the panel. So thank you.
Really looking forward to that very much indeed. Tyler Rodelico at AstraZeneca. Perhaps you could, last but not least, thanks for your patience. Tell us about yourself and your role, and what you're excited about today.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me today. So I am the Director of Omnichannel and Content Strategy at AZ, and I sit within US Med Affairs. I am a board-certified oncology pharmacist. I practiced for 4 years before coming over to AZ, and I've been at AZ for about 4 years now. Something that really shocked me coming to a pharma job was seeing the data on how discordant care is relative to guidelines. I thought that it shocked me, honestly. So I recognize the importance of making sure that our customers are getting the right message so they could treat their patients in accordance to guidelines. On the medical side, I have two main roles. One is helping the individual indication teams in our oncology franchise with their digital and omnichannel projects. And I'll offer a medical perspective here. Our budgets tend to be significantly less. But the other half of my job is figuring out ways of working with commercial and how we can really elevate customer engagement within AZ by sharing data where we can compliantly. So I can provide some perspective there too.
That's fantastic. Great. Okay, let's get started with questions. There are a lot to get through. Ben, I'm just going to jump in with you if that's okay.
Sure.
Let's just talk about HCP and patient expectations and how they evolved. Can you just tell us how the extent to which you believe that personalization is now a necessity for commercial success in life sciences? Is it sort of central now?
Yes, and I'm going to go with yes, and. So I think it's essential because, to me, probably to all of us, omnichannel is the right message at the right time and the right moment to the right person. And it's about influencing them so that their behavior changes in a way that impacts patient outcomes, right? So if you're just sending the same experience to absolutely everyone in all moments, you're not really able to move the needle. You're also probably not communicating your message appropriately. So I feel like that's why it's important, but I also am going to say, here's the and part. Don't overdo it, right? Like many times in the HCP world, there are meaningful segments at a pretty high level that allow us to be efficient in the way we communicate. I'm using efficiency as the word of like, don't spend a ton of money on 52,000 different iterations of something. And you can get the same message. I think on the patient caregiver side, there's a lot more nuance because there's a lot more challenges that could come up. So that's sort of like my, yes, I love it, but also be strategic about it and don't just overdo it to overdo it.
Aletta, perhaps you could come in here. What's your
Yeah,
take?
yeah. I wanted to add on the first part of your question about how are specifically HCP and patient expectations evolving, because I think we feel sometimes that pharma is a different beast than the rest of the world and the rest of the organizations and companies out there, but we are not. We are the experience we provide a customer, an HCP, a patient should be in line with the experience that they have with any other organization that they engage with. That pharma experience should be no different. We have more than enough intelligence and money to be able to provide a personalized customer experience. And we know that if we're able to deliver a personalized customer experience, like let's say the IKEA, the Ubers of the world, that has a positive business impact. And our customers and patients are more likely to support, discuss, refer our company when they're having conversations. It's just that we're a little bit behind. We didn't think about personalized customer experiences in the concept of an omnichannel ecosystem previously. So our organizations are not set up that way. So we're trying to recalibrate and catch up with other companies like a Wayfair, where you would have an amazing omni-channel customer experience, or an IKEA or an Uber. We just need to get to that, and regulatory environment should be no reason that we cannot get there. We have more than enough knowledge internally to be able to figure that out.
Can you share a successful initiative that you've been involved in? I mean, and tell us a little bit about what was key to that.
Yeah. So without getting into specifics of a successful initiative for a specific brand or our internal technical setup, I will talk about the key success factors of that personalization. So there's obviously different levels of personalization that you can provide. There is the personalization on the singular tactic level. So are you going to personalize an email by simply dynamically inserting the physician's name? Or are you going to send an email based on something the physician engaged with before? That's very simple personalization level. Then there's the more complex personalization, which is building full campaigns based on segmentation. So let's say you've got 3 or 4 different segments. You have the skeptics, the innovators, building personalized campaigns on that level to deliver a continuous engagement experience across your field team, across your digital channels, based on what that segmentation needs in order to drive that behavior change. So we do both types. I would say we do more of the simple level of personalization. We're moving into this concept of campaign planning, which is planning out tactics and messages by segment and delivering those automatically where possible. And then I think the most important thing, the key to success in these instances of personalization, is having your segmentation criteria defined, who should be receiving what and why, and also what are the objectives? What is the end goal, right? And I think there's probably questions in the list, but moving away from a vanity metric of CTR, views, clicks, and towards full, like, adoption. What phases of that campaign has somebody engaged with? Has it driven them towards this full adoption that essentially equates to they've been fully informed, and we can now recalibrate maybe our field force to focus on other customers who have not yet been fully informed. So varying degrees of personalization and little nuggets of success in there.
Has a role here. Scott, I know that you've talked about this. First, could you expand a little bit for us?
Yeah, so people tend to think in terms of personalization and the outcomes, revenue, prescription lift, and these are all really valid and important business metrics, but they're really North Star if you think about all the things that lead up to it. And one of the ways you really need to have a framework in terms of how your brand or brands are interacting with either HCPs or patients or market access, and having a really defined customer journey, HCP journey, what that relationship looks like, what the different stages are, and what are the metrics within those different stages that indicate engagement, response. Aletta mentioned adoption. What does that mean from a measurement standpoint? And the more you can think about that, the deeper you can get into the systems required, the data required, the type of content or communications required, the more you can build a really holistic measurement plan around that. And I think there's a real value in personalization beyond just the metrics. The act of going through and unifying HCP data, the act of going through and unifying your communication channels, the act of going through and thinking about specific use cases and being able to execute and measure those use cases, those provide a lot of value throughout the organization on the commercial side in terms of capabilities you're able to build down the road. So you might be thinking about this specific use case or purpose, but by having that core capability, you're going to be able to say, oh, now we can do this. Oh, now we can do that. It really opens up a world of possibilities.
Absolutely. I mean, Ben, I mean, just what personalized omnichannel tactics have been effective to make improvements in metrics that impact the business? What's your take on that?
I think we have found that this is kind of why I was talking about not overdoing it. So from a personalization perspective, like absolutely include someone's name and include relevant content, but it's about taking it kind of up a level. And I think, Scott, you started with talking about like blueprinting or journeying. If we build a blueprint or a customer journey from like awareness to consideration, trial, adoption, usage, staying on treatment, And you align all of the key moments that you want to own along that. And then you align the proper content to each of those moments. But then you do that both in terms of the patient experience and the HCP experience. HCP experience sort of also includes things like next best action, right? Which may also extend to other field roles. If you do that kind of organization of your total campaigns, then within individual tactics, we find on average a 20% increase in efficiency of performance defined by key business metrics. I will say, though, one of the simplest and easiest things to do from a personalization perspective that's really, I think, underutilized is when you're looking at key business indicators like new patient starts or refills, it's taking it along to the next level and thinking about something like a net promoter score almost, right? Where we engage with key audience members or key customers and we ask them what their experience was like and if they'd recommend you. And that can be, there's a lot of ways. It can be a survey, it can be a phone call, but if someone says that they didn't have a good experience, calling back and finding out why and trying to fix that and adjust it has really helped move the needle for me in a lot of organizations. And I think that's something that we don't talk about a lot.
Absolutely. Tyler, I'd like to come to you just now, if I may, because it's time. I think we should touch on a little bit about personalization in action and actual use cases and practical on the ground stuff. What are the most persistent barriers that you think that you've encountered in scaling personalization? I'm sort of thinking data silos, MLR, things like that. What's your take on that?
So there are two things that I've encountered, and most of the initiatives that I've been involved with are pre-launch and unbranded. Post-launch, usually commercials leading that, and it gets a bit messy when medical also has some assets and there's only so much data we can share since medical can't do promotion. So on the pre-launch side, there's only so much time and it disappears. I mean, we think we have runway and it seems like project after project, we're really, leaning on the build team and need to get things out, right? So on the medical side, something that I've been able to help a lot with is our teams need to be working with commercial, and commercial teams need to be working with us. And that really expands what we can accomplish. Just on your comment on personalization, from a, like medical only standpoint, it gets tricky. Short timelines, our budgets tend to be smaller. And to Ben's point, we also don't want to overwork this. There's a certain point where we just have to get things done. So it's striking that balance.
Scott, I just wanted to ask you about organizations just getting started. What are some sort of low risk, high impact personalization pilots that they can pursue today? They're right there waiting for them.
Yeah, we like to break personalization into two sort of big buckets. I'd say one you could call push personalization, which is more of a bulk where you've got data you're collecting about HCPs or patients or particular target audiences. You've got a lot of information in your CRM system, and then you create a templated structure. So you've got a templated email, and it's pulling different information into a bucket, and it gets sent out. Email is one of the easiest places to do personalization out of the gate. You've got first-party connections, but thinking about an email as a template, and then what kind of data can you or content can you pull it in that's personalized either to that segment, to a lettuce point, or even the individuals. And there's a lot of attributes. What is HCP's population? What language do they deal with? Are they dealing with young children? What's their specialty and functional? So I think there's a lot of examples within that world. email and websites as well. And so on the other side of personalization, you have more real-time personalization. So someone is actively looking at a piece of content, for example, or they're coming in from a certain referral. They're using certain keywords to find information on your website, whether through Google or through the search on your site. When someone is doing that, that is real-time information. They're in the know. In multiple ways within your website or portal, you can then serve up personalized content. So if you've thought through about, hey, if someone's reading this piece of content or this type of content, what would be the next best piece of content to serve up this person? And the tools are out there to do this. It's been done, as Letta mentioned earlier, it's been done for years in e-commerce or retail or other sources. And so now we're bringing some of these tactics and capabilities into the life sciences world. It's interesting. We did an omni-channel survey of life science companies, and fully 93% are not using a next best action capability, and that's table stakes in most of the other industries. So really thinking about how to use predictive analytics and AI to sort of pick up that next best thing that you can deliver in a really easy way is a pretty low bar, and you can easily measure that as well to see what the lift is.
And personalization pilots, what's your take there when for organizations just getting started? Have you got any tips?
Sorry, is that to me?
No, to Ben.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear
Well,
my
it
name.
can be to you as well, Alan. I'll come
I
to you
didn't hear my
next.
name. If you're just getting started, I say, start small. I agree with Scott. The easiest, I think, channel with which to engage in personalization is CRM, just because of the one-to-one data connections. And when starting small, I would also say, think about what next is, and always sort of keep your eye to the sky for that, so that you can build your internal capabilities map and your technology or your investments map to that. One watch out is sort of being like, hey, we're going to do omnichannel, but we need 2 years to figure out what our capabilities are going to be and what our technology is going to be before we show any results. So I always say, like, do something measurable quickly, and then kind of build it as you're flying it to expand those capabilities and stay current.
How do you define success when it comes to personalization? Are there metrics that matter? Are there critical measurements, or are you and if so, how are they tracked and operationalized across your team?
Me again?
Yes, sorry, Ben. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. So there's leading and lagging indicators, right? In pharma, if you're looking to connect every single action to a business outcome, you have to really think about what the life cycle is of a customer experience to get on treatment or get diagnosed and get on treatment. And in many areas, it can take a minute. So I would say on the front end, we look for leading indicators. For example, simple things: click-through rate, cost pers, open rate, really kind of simple media metrics. But that's not the whole story, though. The whole story is, did the experience or series of experiences throughout the campaign across all the channels, did they result in either new patient starts or decreasing in patients falling off, whatever the goal is. So it's aligning to those metrics. And the way to kind of purport that across the organization is, when you're building out that customer journey map, it needs to go into more than just moment along the marketing funnel, moment along the journey, the signals you're looking for, the experience by segment or by person. You actually have to align what each metrics are for every single thing and socialize them so everyone knows what good looks like. And then you have to talk about it a lot, because you want to make sure that you're staying on top of it. And then you have to say, geez, this thing's working really good. Let's do more of it. This thing's not working so much. Do we stop doing it, or do we do something else? That's really key. And I think bringing your teams along too. So like in my organization, we are sort of a center of excellence, but we align to the various brand teams. Bringing the brand teams into that conversation, from planning through execution and through those facilitation conversations, is really key. In fact, the reason I'm in New York right now is doing just that with one of our teams. We're kicking off tactical planning. And so we were here building a customer journey and talking through all of those moments and all of those data points. And the brand team absolutely wanted to be completely a part of it, and so did our agencies.
Fantastic. Scott, what's your take on this? I know you've got something to say about how you define success and the metrics that matter. Perhaps you could pick this one up.
Yeah, I'm sure Letta and Tyler have good points too, but coming from the world of um, uh, technical implementation, there's so many metrics you have. So depending on what stage are you at? So we think a lot about entry and exit criteria in terms of segments. So what does it mean when someone enters? So are they looking at specific content? What is their engagement? Are they spending time on site? Are they engaging in high value activities? So are they reaching out to you? Are they responding to your field sales outreach? Are they actively consuming content? And you can associate all of those high value activities with business metrics. So first time patient prescriptions, adherence, refills. Um, um, so there's a lot of metrics that are involved, and I think with HCPs, one of the models that we focus on is really bringing over sort of the account-based marketing approach in a B2B world because an HCP is not just a standalone person. He or she works in a clinic or a research institution or a hospital. They've got office staff. They've got key influencers. They've got a bigger team as they learn about different therapeutics and how to diagnose and how to prescribe and help their patients. There's a whole decisioning team around that. And if you think about all the people at the pharma company that want to talk to the HCP and all the people that the HCP deal with within their environment, we think about the high value activities that we can track. And again, those are engagement metrics, those are outreach metrics, those are response metrics, consumption metrics. And so your system has to be tuned to listen for those signals.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. And Tyler, I just want to talk a bit about getting effective collaboration between teams when you're personalizing. You've got marketing, sales, medical, and regulatory. They've all got to work together. What's your take on that, Tyler?
So I like to frame it that there's three opportunities for collaboration between medical and commercial specifically. And this spans personalization. The more that we're collaborating, the more that there's an opportunity to do this. The first scenario is medical and commercial are doing their own things. And I think that might be a requirement at some pharma companies, but I think at most companies, there's more leeway to work together. So two completely separate campaigns, if both sides are doing them, and that's obviously not efficient here. The second level is having more of a divide and conquer approach, where medical and commercial are sitting down and one team decides to educate on this side, another focuses on, the unmet needs specifically, but those are still two separate campaigns. And where there's the greatest opportunity for personalization and just collaboration and impact in general is working on a single unified initiative. And I think what that looks like at every company is going to be different, but especially in the unbranded space, there's opportunity there.
Interesting. When we're talking about kind of organizational issues, I mean, what for you does change management look like then? If you've got the collaboration going, but then you've also got to introduce sometimes disruptive choices.
Yeah,
How do you do that?
that's something I'm actively working on. There's a lot of people have different perceptions on what's possible. And I feel like I'm pioneering this within my organization, along with my business excellence commercial colleagues, where we're having conversations with compliance, we're understanding exactly where these lines are. We're pitching to teams like, hey, there's this opportunity here. And we're getting resistance of, wait, no, that's not compliant, right? And then that bogs things down. So my plan and what I've been working on is having a successful pilot, showing what we can do, and then we have something that we can point to of, hey, this worked, this is what we did, very clear communication there. This is going to take years. right, to drive that kind of change across multiple initiatives, but we're chipping away at it.
It's a slow process, isn't it? And let's just get your take on this. I mean, what do you think of the essential change management steps to align organizations? And what do you think have been the key steps to move away from vanity KPIs to real business driving measures?
Yeah, so I'm going to relate this up to your previous question too around what are some of the barriers that we are having to illustrate this. But I think one of the big barriers that we have is just the general understanding of what is omnichannel. And I also am like, what is omnichannel? Like it feels like a word that we're just using to say maybe sometimes it means digital, sometimes it means like email, sometimes it means everything, sometimes it means campaign planning. So we're trying to figure out what's our communication strategy around what is omnichannel and what is the value it brings to the business. And the other barrier is simply just bridging the gap between what we do as an omnichannel team that we can orchestrate without a field member or a sales rep and what the sales rep, the customer facing team, the sales reps are doing. We need to bring those together because truly omnichannel is all of that works together, not omnichannel here, sales team here, but the sales team is part of that omnichannel experience. So in order to drive change management, as you asked, and to bring all of those channels together into an omnichannel experience and be able to actually communicate business value is we start at the top. So a lot of our organizations probably have an executive committee, something like that, where you bring concepts, you bring ideas forward to get that buy-in at the top level, right? So classic change management process is get that buy-in, select project stakeholders who are going to be involved from cross-functional teams, whether it's marketing, medical, analytics, build your core team. And we approach things through a campaign planning lens of rather than mapping out this entire journey that has 5, 6, 7 stages, which is complex to orchestrate. And I think generally as an industry, we're moving away from large, complex journeys towards small, manageable campaigns that can be automated through something like a CDP. So we map out those campaigns together, we define what the goals are, and we do have some of those vanity metrics as part of that, but the real goal is how many customers did we move through this campaign? Who moved through the phases that we've defined within a manageable time frame of 6 to 8 to 12 months? And then we link that to business impact. So prescription lift, if we can. Of course, on the medical side, we are not able to do that. So we have very different KPIs and objectives for medical campaigns, but for commercial campaigns, if we can demonstrate that a campaign has driven business impact, that's when everyone starts to pay attention. And if we can also use that campaign to begin to drive changes in how we interact with the customers. So if we're seeing gaps where we have customers who haven't been engaged with any channel, we can use our campaign concept to find those pockets to recalibrate and reshift our efforts. So moving away from CTR and clicks, moving towards business impact, such as prescription lift, patient support enrollments, those types of things, and how all of those tactics contribute to that core singular objective. That's how you get the buy-in and change management.
What would you like to bring to this change management discussion? I know you've got a lot of experience to bring here.
Yeah, I mean, at point B, there's change management in virtually every project we do, and we do a lot of change management. I think one thing that is important, I just want to touch on some. So we think about, we like to map out the customer or patient journey or HCP journey, and within that are specific use cases. So it might be something like encouraging someone to participate in an educational webinar or a new therapeutic being released or something that's specific. And within that, we can have campaigns. And so campaigns are really the organizing function around work, which is great, but it's got to fit into a use case that's got its metrics. Campaign's got its metrics. A use case is going to have its metrics, and then a customer journey overall are going to have its metrics. So they all can really work together, and it's a function of really understanding the HCP and what they're going through in their day-to-day lives, what's getting away. And back to this concept of every touch point is an opportunity. And so how do we make every touch point have the most value both to the HCP or the patient and the brand itself? But one of the things I did want to bring up with change management is one of my favorite quotes is from Charlie Munger, who's the second in command at Berkshire Hathaway, and he said, "So show me the incentive plan, and I'll show you the outcome." And so when you think about teams working together, how do you align incentives or measurements that are cross-functional, that are built around a campaign or a process or a use case that where multiple people are involved? You think about the content supply chain, for example. So how long does it take to get through MLR? What's that cycle time? What's the velocity? With all the different people that will touch something in that content supply chain, you can have metrics around that, right? First review acceptance, no post MLR issues. So you can think about metrics within that particular work stream, right? That span across teams that get people aligned around working together, which is really what you want.
Fantastic. Tyler, let's talk about measuring guideline concordant care here in medical. I know that's something that you've had some experience on here. Could you share with
Yeah,
us?
absolutely. So we don't have the luxury of looking at sales data in medical, and a lot of you alluded to this. So we have to look at things at a class level, or we can look at things like changes in diagnostic test ordering. And these are indicators that we really want to drive to, but they lag even behind the metrics that the commercial team's getting on prescription sales, right? So this is all of the engagement metrics up front that my co-panelists have mentioned are all relevant, and those lagging indicators are a bit tougher to measure. And it really depends on the disease state too. So if the drug that, I'm involved in an unbranded campaign for doesn't have any competitors and there's none on the horizon, in medical, we can't really metric or measure how much of an impact we're having because we need to look at a drug class. If there's a diagnostic test with that drug that's unique to the drug, that's something that we might be able to look at. But that differs if there's already competitors, and we could look at, increasing the amount of immunotherapy used in a specific patient population.
Jonathan, if I could, I'd like to add in something, and more just Tyler, for your perspective too, is I've always thought about for medical, because of that, okay, we can't link it to business outcomes, we can't link it to prescriptions. Is there a way to measure behavior change through our MSLs? If we have a field force that is engaging with our customers, can we implement as part of every engagement some type of survey? Because I know there's that opportunity within Viva, if your MSLs are using Viva or whatever CRM platform you're using, to then just have that every time you have a one-to-one touch point, you capture what is their maybe level of adoption. It could be a way in the medical space to be able to capture behavior change without that link like we have in commercial.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of those kind of, I guess, intermediate type indicators that we can measure. And something that's really important that is a bit tough to wrangle is data from our field. And that spans medical and commercial, right? And you were alluding earlier to just making sure that they are a channel and we're HCP centric, not field centric, and not headquarters centric. So yes, we can measure HCP sentiment as measured by an MSL. And I think that's a big opportunity. There's also some trickiness, right? Because it's subjective. And if you're asking MSLs to track this over time, that sentiment can be changing. And at the end of a year, and I've heard one of our teams experience this, that everybody was all the way, fully agrees with the data. And there's no way that that's the case, right? So it needs to be crystal clear that, okay, we're tracking this for our understanding and to make sure that we can be more effective as an organization. And we're not using this as an MSL metric, because that always raises people's hairs.
Let's just talk now. We can't get this far into the webinar without going to AI. Let's do the AI thing. We all know it has to be done, and there's lots to say about it. Um, uh, uh, Ben, Jazz, could I just ask you? I mean, what innovations in AI and data and omnichannel do you think are going to have the biggest impact on the life science market in the next 1 to 3 years?
I think for this is strictly an omnichannel perspective, just because I actually think for the field outside of omnichannel experiences, AI is going to have a whole other impact. But within omnichannel customer experiences, using data, building predictive models and data that tell us when something is going to happen. So right now we look for signals in our campaigns of something that has already happened, right? A patient gets on therapy, lapses, something happens. But if we could get really good at building data models that are like, hey, this patient's probably going to drop off therapy because of these reasons, and here's when it's going to happen, I think that's a game changer. And it's something we always try to crack the code on.
Great, Tyler. What about your AI kind of horizon? Looking at your crystal ball, could you tell us what you think it's going to be like 1 to 3 years' time?
So part part of AI that I'm most excited about is streamlining. Well, I guess there's two. From understanding exactly where our docs are and being able to crunch our MSL sentiment and all the MSL data on top of everything that's happening in the public domain, that would, if it works, it would be a game changer. But again, in medical, it's tough. We can only look at so much on claims. So we'll see how that pans out. On one other use case that I'm excited about is how we can best aggregate data for our field force. And the benefit we have with the field is that they are the intelligence, right? So we can serve data to them. They can figure out what's most relevant. Now, we'll get to a point where AI is very good at serving that right data. So I'm excited to get there.
Hey, let's just talk about the use of AI today. Aletta, in omnichannel, where do you think AI assists you, and how can you use it in omnichannel? What is your experience?
Yeah, and again, I'm going to bring up the context of Canada, which makes it extremely challenging when it comes to content personalization, because in the commercial side of things in Canada, all branded content needs to go through our regulatory review process, which makes it difficult to create a lot of content so you can easily personalize, and also doesn't really currently capture AI generated content. So if I have an AI engine that is going to generate content, all of that content that's going to be generated needs to previously be approved by our regulatory board before it's sent out. So you can imagine how complex that is, trying to submit something that you don't even know what it's going to be, because it's based on customer preferences and a whole slew of information. So the content personalization piece in Canada is complex. However, there is an opportunity to do it. We just need to advance in partnership with our regulatory review board in Canada. The other piece, the easy piece for us where we use AI, and I'm sure a lot of organizations do, is just if you've got 4 segments with 4 different behavioral profiles and different information needs, if you have your core info, uploading that, using your segmentation, and asking AI to generate your content based on your 4 segmentation. So if I have a segment that is more data driven, what can I do with this content to highlight those pieces? Or if I have a segment that prefers an emotional sort of patient forward approach, how can I modify this content for that voice? And then you submit those sort of 3, 4 executional pieces to your review board for approval. So we can do it that way. I think we have a long way to go to figure out how AI is going to help us, because I still think we need to fix our technical ecosystem as a whole, right? Like, we need to be able to connect all of the platforms that we have, make them talk to one another, and hopefully through a CDP, you can do that. then you can start thinking about AI. But I think in terms of automated channel orchestration, if you don't have a CDP in place, you're probably far off from using AI to orchestrate an omni-channel experience.
Absolutely. Scott, what's your take on the value of AI in omnichannel?
Yeah, I want to plus one on Aletta with the CDP, a customer data platform that helps you unify everything. But we're seeing AI in a bunch of ways. One I mentioned earlier, next best action. So the predictive analytics. What is the next best piece of content, touch point, what have you for your target audience? That's a predictive AI piece that's been around for a long time, that can be built in on top of Viva CRM. A second one is it's not just content but channel. So if you've got an HCP that really maybe just in the late at night they're watching videos or they're reading research reports, or it's the type of content, it's the device they're on, it's the time of day. Those are all personalized experiences that you really focus on when you deliver that based on when they're most likely to interact. And so all the big platforms have that. Your Brazes, your Adobes, they all have that sort of core functionality. I also think content, not just in terms of new content, but derivative content. At least in the US, some of our clients are experimenting with bringing either low-level production or derivative work in-house versus agencies. So I think that opens a whole new can in terms of how that process works. And then, yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of process automation. So as you think about your MLR process, where can AI help with meta tagging data, meta tagging dams, automatically routing more effectively, optimizing the process. So there's opportunities within process automation to inject AI as well. So lots of opportunity.
Fantastic. I've got a question from the audience now. I'm not going to ask it immediately because we're giving you some time to think about it. It's a little bit kind of abstract in a way, but we'll come to it in a minute. But I think it has potential to really get a good conversation going, which is how we define high value activity. How do we define high value activity? But before we go there, perhaps we'll come to that in a minute, and I'll maybe ask a couple of folks about that. Scott, I want to stay with you just to talk about AI and personalization and how your MLR process had to evolve. I mean, just talking about operational and structural integration here. I mean, what has worked and what hasn't in adapting to this new pace?
Yeah, so the first step is always to go in depth and map the process. I mean, Ben talked earlier about having conversations. That's a super important part of any sort of process mapping. And in that, you will find areas that are creating friction. And so our number one tactic is always to understand what the process is, identify areas in people's day-to-day work where you can reduce friction. It might be the handoffs, it might be the way data is presented, it might be the way comments are collected. And so instead of a string of comments around a piece of content that is in an email chain, how do you collaborate that? Maybe within Viva or another review tool. We think about how do you tier content? What needs to have a full review versus can be a shortened review cycle. So there's ways to separate that out. Global versus regional. I know there was a question around global versus regional. What can be approved at a global level and then modified at a regional? How do you lift the friction or lift the toil for regional reviewers based on some global capabilities, based on regional needs? And then think about the technology that can help automate a lot of the process, automate the routing. So there's quite a few ways within the MLR process that you can look to speed up things like content velocity, increase first review acceptance, decrease quality issues, and all those sorts of things. So lots of it.
Fantastic. We've had a great question just come in here, which Tyler, I thought you might be interested in handling. Just give examples of how medical and commercial orchestrate or strategically partner. How can these two entities work together? What are the best practices for that?
So it's easier on the unbranded side, since that's non-promotional. That we can generally share data more freely there. I think the first step of strategic partnership is really sitting down at the table and agreeing to work together. And that doesn't always happen, right? Especially when timelines are tight. Beyond that, what can strategically be done? I think dividing and conquering, even within a unified initiative, based on what we're best at, is important. So medical is great at creating deep scientific content, typically things that are longer form, and commercial has years of history in targeting and making things that just grab attention, right? So that partnership where we're both working on what we're best at is a best practice.
Great. Just coming back to that point I brought up earlier on, Ben at Jazz, just talking about what does high value activity look like for you? Perhaps you could give me some sort of input on that from the Jazz perspective.
Definitely. Speaking of leading indicators, we think of high valued actions as a leading indicator. And I think the best way to define it is activities that are akin to business outcomes, right? So on a website, for example, we'll look at the correlation of certain things happening and their likelihood to predict a new patient start, for example. It could also be microsite engagement or specific pieces of content engagement that live outside of a website, but largely it's website activity that means meaningful outcomes down the road, most likely. Fun fact, it's oftentimes like signing up for an email can be one of the, I know that sounds really simple, but that can be one of the most predictive high valued actions. Downloading doctor discussion guides or patient guides. It's really those things. There are other things too, right? Like oftentimes marketers will say we want to include video views as a high valued action, or we want to include clicking a specific link or something on the site. But that's more because of the importance of the content, not necessarily because it's connected to something. But when you take a step back and you do an actual statistical analysis of site activities that predict outcomes, it's usually like downloads, signups, things like that. So what you do is if your analytics are connected in the right way and you're measuring campaign performance, in addition to looking at things like click-through rate as a front end or leading indicator, you also connect it to and did they also sign up to receive emails or, download this thing? It gets you closer to understanding whether or not the business impact is going to happen.
Fantastic. Alexa, what's your take on what's a high value activity? Do you have a particular view?
Yeah, so from one perspective, it's what is your market research telling you is important to your customers? So that to me would be this is a high value tactic because this is the type of information they want to receive. And I think a lot of times, or I know a lot of times in the various pharmaceutical companies that I've seen market research for is that we know the medical content, the scientific content, events, medical events, that is the type of content that physicians are looking for and value. So those would be from that perspective, high value. But then there's also from the perspective of your business and what's driving the business forward, what's a high value tactic. You can use things like a market mix analysis to understand what combination of activities are driving business outcomes. So is it simply they just need a one-to-one rep interaction and that is going to give you a positive business outcome? Or is it that using multiple channels, such as a one-to-one with an event, that drives higher business value, or is it a different combination? So if you have internally an analytics or a data science team, you can partner with them to do these sorts of predictive analysis to see what tactics are driving high value, and then use that in your campaign planning moving forward.
Fantastic. Scott, high value activity. What's top of your list?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of them. The way I try and distinguish high value from other activities is, sending an email is not a high value activity. someone responding to the email, downloading content, engaging in some way, having a conversation, reaching out to you. So anything that shows that there is a layer more than you're just, pushing out something to push out something, can go into the bucket. And again, if you've got a framework around what are the different interactions that are available that happen between your field sales and your HCPs or any of the marketing campaigns you have and the end users, and you think about, strategically about what are the ones that really matter, and then you instrument your analytics around that, then you've got a way to capture those and organize them, and then you can attribute them to business outcomes. But really thinking about what, high value from the standpoint of, is it really driving value for the end user? As much as you can think about that, the closer you're going to get to really defining that successfully.
Yes, well, we've only got a few minutes left now. I just wanted to, and there's a whole area which we haven't touched on. I guess we have to move through it quite quickly if we're going to cover it. I'd love to know about omnichannel strategy and engagement, really, and just have a quick chat about with you, Ben, at Jazz, talking about omnichannel versus multi-channel. Is there such a thing as omnichannel versus multi-channel anymore, or does it make sense to talk in those terms?
I think so. I think a lot of people earlier, I don't know, was it a lot of, were you talking about everyone has a different definition of omnichannel? And I think a lot of folks get stuck in the old definitions of thinking like digital marketing and a curated campaign or an orchestrated campaign alone in itself is omnichannel. And while it's part of it, it's not really it. So I always try to frame the definition of omnichannel as it's strategically thinking through the moments that or the signals that you need to look for within the customer journey to orchestrate customer engagements and across channels. And a channel can be a person, like a channel can be a rep, a channel can be digital media, a channel can be email, but orchestrate these events by using data, but also using things like affinity or lead scoring to determine most likely to drive actioning. But it's really that whole process of like the thinking through, the finding the moments or the signals, the getting the content set up to orchestrate, and then it's bringing people through each of these moments to ensure outcomes. Multi-channel is sort of like I launch a digital media campaign, I have an email and I have a website, and they're all kind of going on asynchronously. And I hope that people engage with content, and I hope that someone does something that they wouldn't have otherwise had done. But omnichannel makes you bring that all together a lot easier, much more thoughtfully, much more orchestrated. And also at the end of the day, once you build your capabilities and your infrastructure, your promotional costs actually go down, because when you're that precise and you're looking for all those signals as opposed to just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, you're able to spend less and get more. So it's just anchoring in those things and having those conversations and educating the organization and doing it in like a friendly, approachable, meaningful way and demonstrating business outcomes so that people kind of really align to it. And over time, you see that brains kind of go from understanding what they think something is to what it really is. I think when I first started at Jazz, everyone thought omnichannel it's CRM and we have all this amazing data and we have these wonderful campaigns. I'm like, that is one part of it. There is also all these other things that happen. And everyone was like, whoa, I didn't realize we could do all that stuff. And I was like, let's dig in. And everyone's really excited about it.
And I bet all of us,
Exactly, just jump in.
Jonathan, I would just add, I think all of us in Omnichannel on this call, anyone who's listening in, when you think of multi-channel versus omnichannel, you automatically see that adoption curve that I'm sure we're all very familiar with of the level of maturity. And as it goes up, you go from singular to multi to omnichannel. And really, they're all just terms to indicate the level of personalization that you have.
Yeah, we think about omnichannel as really coordinating and sequencing across channels. But then there's also personalization. So you can have a single message that is maybe targeted at a segment that is coordinated and sequenced across your channels, right? But is there space within those channels to personalize that message according to some attribute or behavior of the recipient? So again, region, language, therapeutic area, functional expertise, right? Recent engagement. There's a lot of different ways to think about that. So, creating the data infrastructure so that you're using a CDP, as Aletta had mentioned earlier, or something like that to, assemble that data so that you can have a really efficient system and a really scalable way to personalize people based on, templates, pre-approved content, things like that that are relevant to that person within a scalable framework.
Fantastic. Now we've run out of time completely. I'm afraid I've gone over the hour, so we've got to wrap up super quick. I'd just love everybody just bring one point that they think is critical or most important, or that they've enjoyed hearing or speaking about the most. Tyler, coming to you, I mean, what do you take away from today, and how would you like your audience to remember this session, particularly any kind of key points, or one key point that you're particularly interested in?
Part of my takeaway is just it's amazing how much data is out there, and especially how much data that the commercial team has access to and what you can do with that. My key takeaway is everyone should be working cross-functionally, and that'll make things more efficient internally, more effective, and it will be less noisy for our HCPs.
Fantastic. Ben, coming to you, what's the top of your list of today's points?
Omnichannel is a mindset and it requires change. And I think in order to do that, communication, collaboration, learning, and doing it again and again and again will help you get successful.
Fantastic. Aletta?
Omnichannel is the glue between all of the functions in your organization and all of the channels at your organization, whether you call it omnichannel, whether you call it data-driven marketing, whether it's multi-channel. It is having a bird's eye view and connecting everything together. And I encourage everyone to look into what a CDP is, a customer data platform. And if you are at the maturity where this could be helpful, then this is definitely the next level up that can help you to reach your personalization objectives.
Perfect. Scott, your top takeaway from today?
Yeah, I think for us and from what we've heard today, omnichannel is really a structure for finding a way to have those really good interactions and those key touch points between a brand and a patient or HCP, and unifying around a vision, unifying around that journey, unifying around what real value is in terms of these interactions will help drive your use cases, will help drive your work, and will help propel you along that journey, because it is a journey. You start simple and work your way up, and it's a process of aligning everyone around that unified vision.
Fantastic. Well, sadly, we have to wrap up now. I'd like to thank our amazing panelists for their insights today. Huge topics. We covered a massive amount of ground in such a short time, and you've brought so much richness to the webinar today. So thank you very much, Ben, Aletta, Scott, and Tyler for your contributions today. Obviously, I'd love to thank Point B for sponsoring today's event. That's excellent. And finally, I'd just like to say that if you're interested, I'd like to thank the audience too, and thank you for some of your questions, which were fantastically useful. So thank you to our lovely audience listening in now and in the coming days. If you're interested in the topics that we've covered today, please do keep an eye open for the Customer Engagement USA event in October, the 28th, 29th. It'll be a simultaneous one in Europe as well. Email links and details will be coming to you shortly. So thank you very much. Just remains for me to say thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye for now.